and here we are live from lockdown. Good to see you guys once again. This is our 19th episode. It's now exactly 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is where we do this every single week. We've been doing this for 19 weeks. Thank you guys for joining us. Looks like we have almost 300 people in here already. A lot of you are regulars and some of you are first timers. If you're first timers, don't be shy. Jump into the chat there and say hello, introduce yourself. We're a friendly bunch. And we're basically made up of the Cafe crew. So this is two parts of the Cafe crew, one from photoshopcafe.com and the newsletter, and then we are also on YouTube. So half of you are from YouTube and half of you are from the newsletter or Photoshop Cafe. And drop in a comment, let us know where you're from, and introduce yourselves to your other siblings from the Cafe crew, because we're all part of one family. So what we're doing here is we're going to be doing two parts like we normally do. We're going to start off with some tutorials and things that I prepared, and then we're going to go into Fix My Photo, where we're going to look at some of the photographs that you guys have uploaded, and I'll give you links later of how you can upload your photos to be included. So what we're going to do this week is something a little bit different. Because I was thinking, we've been doing a lot of stuff in Camera Raw, which is great. We're going to continue to do that. But I wanted to just kind of start off with something a little bit different that we haven't really done, and that's creating textures. So we're actually going to make some textures today. We're going to obviously do a lot of other things, but we're going to kick off with this, where we're literally going to photograph things. So I'm just going to take textures, different things here, and I'm going to show you how you can use these in Photoshop, even a sieve. So a lot of people are missing out on a lot of what you can do, just not even realizing how easy it is to do this. So maybe you've downloaded textures from the internet, or maybe you bought them from Adobe Stock or different places. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you just simply, let's make some textures that we can use inside of Photoshop, and we'll make them so they're reusable. So of course you're always going to have them. So all you need is a mobile phone. And I think most of us have one of those at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to get the camera app. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to take a picture of just a regular sheet of paper. And now this can be fun for different types. If you find interesting paper with textures or paper bags, or even stuff in the trash, like seriously, this is found stuff that we're going to be doing. And I hope I can encourage you to just go around like a crazy person photographing everything. And that's one of the things I do. I photograph everything, and then I build up this incredible texture library. And so we're just going to start with a blank piece of paper, which is, there we go, almost pointless, but you'll see. It can be useful because sometimes you're looking for a texture of paper. Why not just photograph it? Okay, so now we want to create a textured piece of paper. Just get a piece of paper, screw it up. And of course, this works really well. Things like wax paper, tin foil, or aluminum foil in the US, aluminium foil in UK, and tin foil in New Zealand and Australia. All right, so what I've done here is I've just crinkled up a piece of paper. Very, very simple. You guys can see that right there. And I'm just putting it down. Sorry, I don't have an overhead camera. I mean, we got a camera, we got lower thirds. Give me a minute. Eventually, we probably will add an overhead camera in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my photo. I'm just going to put it down directly above, and I'm going to snap a photograph of that. So we've just taken a photo of that texture. All right, what about a cloth? I've got this nice cloth here. It's a microfiber cloth. Does an amazing job of cleaning these glasses. By the way, these glasses are super cheap. 3 pairs for $10, but they break a lot from Costco. Anyway, I'm going to take a picture of this cloth. So let's go down here. We're going to take another picture, just another random texture. Great. And I don't even have things very well lit, or actually not lit at all. And then as a sieve, I have no idea if this sieve is going to work or not. But I do see that it activated my graphics tablet nicely. That was great. Okay, so let's take a picture of that. Let's go in nice and close here. Oh, that's really funky. All right, so we've got pictures of that. Now, for those of you who are on Apple, let me just cancel out of there. I don't know what that was. All we need to do is go into our photos here and airdrop them. Now, if you're on Android, you can email them. And also, if you're on an iPhone, you can also email these. How do you open HEIC iPhone photo format in Photoshop? Well, you're about to see. So I actually just shot some here. So I'm going to go into my photos in here. Let's have a look. Let's click on here, done. And so there's my photos. I can see the different photos. So I'm just going to select these photos here. So these are the photos that we just took. We've got that cloth. Let me see if I got the sieve. Looks like it might not have come out. Well, there it is. All right, so I've just got some, oh, there we go. So I've got some weird textures. These are the textures right now. I don't know if you guys can see them there. Let me hold them up. So I'm just selecting them here. And let me make sure. I'll do the blank piece of paper because that can actually be useful. You'll be surprised. And now I'm just going to click on my computer here and I'm airdropping these to my computer. So in a second, you guys should see that appear on the screen here. And it's sending them over right now. Here we go, receiving 4 photos. Let's click on it. And I believe these are going to go to my downloads folder. Okay, so let's open. There we go. And here's the photos, and these are HEIC, or high efficiency format. And you just go into your iPhone or your Android phone and you can set this in preferences. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using a JPEG. In fact, RAW is probably even better, and you can do that through Lightroom Photos. So maybe next time we'll do it. We'll go through Lightroom Mobile. This sieve looks really weird, but hey, that's what we've got. So these are the 4 textures that I just photographed. I've selected them all, and I'm just going to drag them down into the Photoshop icon, and we're going to open these up in Photoshop. All right, so here they are. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop this one a little bit because I don't want any edges showing. So we're just going to crop that. And I'm just going to save these as textures. So if you guys are working inside of Photoshop 2020, go under Window. Oh, let me make sure I get the screen. Hang on guys. Let me go to the desktop. My apologies. So just take a little second for that to click over. All right, so let me show you. I've uploaded these to the photo. And here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those just came in. Let me show you here under the preview. So what happened is they downloaded and I just clicked on the airdrop icon, or it would be your email if you're working in email. And then all I did is I just selected them. These are the 4 photos that we took. And then you just drag them into the Photoshop icon. And this is going to open them here inside of Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is turn these into reusable textures. So if we go up under Window, you're going to see we've got a Patterns panel. Now this was added in Photoshop 2020. If you don't see it there, what you're going to do is you're going to do it the old way, which kind of works similar. Let me show you. What you're going to do is just go up here. You're going to make a selection around there, or just Control-A to select all. Then choose Edit. And then you're going to go down and you're going to choose Define Pattern. So I'm going to click on here, and we'll call it Paper. And click OK. Now notice it appeared right there inside my Patterns panel. Now if you're not in Photoshop 2020, it'll be there under your textures or your patterns. You just don't have a panel to manage them. Alright, so let's go to another one that we've done with the rough paper there. Now if you do have the panel, all you need to do is drag, well actually you select it and then just hit the little plus icon. And we'll call it Crinkle. And click OK. And you can see it just added it there. Okay, let's go to the next one. I don't like these kind of areas, so we're just going to crop this down to an interesting area. And this is the nice thing about working with these patterns, is we can crop. We can do different things. So we're just going to add that. That's a microfiber. I'll just call it MF for microfiber. No, don't get ideas, guys. All right, so what we're going to do here is go up under here, and we've got this really interesting, weird texture. It's almost like probably a good rave kind of thing here. And then we're going to click on that, and this is a sieve. I'll just call it SIV, or I guess I could put the E in, and that's not even how you spell sieve. So, all right, guys, there we go. Okay, someone got my joke there. Jane got my joke. All right, so now that we've created these, we can close these documents down. We don't need them anymore. So I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to choose to close all. So we're not going to save these. We don't need them anymore. We're done. And the nice thing about this is now in my patterns panel. And if you want to save these, you can just go in here and then you can choose to export the panels. So you can select the patterns. I believe we can do multiple ones at once. Click on here, yes we can, and choose to export those patterns. Now you can save those to Creative Cloud or Dropbox or to your desktop or wherever you want. So I really encourage you guys to go ahead and do that and start to build up a collection of these patterns. All right, so what can we do with them? Well, they work very, very well, of course, with blending modes and photos. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go to the library here and we're going to open up some images. So let's go. In fact, I've got one I opened recently. See if it's going to let me do it. It might not. Yeah, I'm going to find it from here. All right, so we're going to go in here. So I use the libraries a lot, and I could at some point, if you guys are interested in a tutorial on these, on the libraries, let me know. Because these things are super, super useful. So I'm just looking for on the chat here. Is that something you guys want? I'm just going to scroll down here and let me know. And yes, I did get a haircut. A few people have asked me that. Thank goodness I finally don't look like a madman anymore. They finally allowed us to get haircuts here in California. And I figured I'd better jump in and get it done quickly before they shut it down again. Now, I didn't go to the hairdresser. You know, I actually had her come here. We wore masks and we opened all the windows and all the doors and actually did it in the garage with the door open where it was nice and safe and ventilated. So in California, you're allowed to do your hair and nails as long as it's done outdoors, not indoors. All right, a libraries tutorial would be good. Yeah, something you guys want to see? Okay, because it can actually do a lot more than what you guys realize. And I don't know how much you use them. Let me know, do you guys use them much? Because I do. I use them all the time. They're so useful. All right, so anyway, so now that we've got that library going, we've got our patterns. Why don't I just move it up here into the stack where it belongs? All right, so why don't we do something with this? Why don't we start with this paper? I'm just going to drag this paper out and we're going to put it over this particular image. Now, the nice thing about doing this, notice it tiles automatically. You can see that tiling. If I double click here, this is going to bring up the pattern fill options. And I can scale these down and you can see what it'll do is it'll create a seamless pattern. Obviously, it's not very seamless, but it doesn't matter because we created this texture nice and big. So you can change the size of it. You can change the angle of it. You can do all of that right here. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm just going to set this to the default here. So just hit the Alt or the Option key, and then you can choose Reset. And then I'm just going to manually just resize this. Okay, let's see if that works in there. I guess I have to do it through here. All right, let's do it 120. There we go. Nice. So then we're going to try something with the blending modes. Now, as we scroll over these layer blending modes, we're going to see how things change. Look at this. And we can get all kinds of different looks. So what we're doing right now is we're just combining something, you know, an organic thing like a piece of paper or something that we've found and putting it over the photo. And look at this. All I need to do is just go to soft light and look at the difference and the interest it's going to do to this photo. Right now, I need to turn my AC on, so I'm going to mute my mic for 1 sec. All right, and I'm going to turn it back on because last time I did that, I set off your guys' smart speakers, so I don't want to do that. That's why I muted for a sec. Okay, so we could go into the soft light. We could go to hard light. You can see there's all kinds of different types of looks and effects that we can create just simply by using a layer blending mode with this piece of paper. And, you know, even if we go to multiply, and then you'll notice it comes with a mask. So if we just choose that layer mask right there, and then we're going to grab a brush. Why don't we go and make sure we've got a nice soft edge brush. So let's go into the brush settings here. And you'll see there's the types of brushes. So the hardness is all the way down. So we've got a nice soft edge brush. And we could select that one right there. That's nice. And we want to make sure black is our foreground color. I don't know why it's on the second screen. Let me bring it over here. Okay, so we want to set black as that foreground color. Now, I was asked something really interesting, and I'm curious about you guys. When you go to choose black, do you go to the left or do you go to the right to choose black? I'm curious. I go to the left, but I'm curious what you guys do to select that black. All right, and we want to make sure our opacity is turned all the way up to 100. And then all we need to do is select that mask now and just paint over our model. And it's as simple as that. Now we can start to blend in that texture. And it's just kind of fun. And I'm going to make this big, and I'm just going to do the whole bottom separately. It does not have to be precise. You just paint over like however you like. And you can see what's happening there. Now, I created something similar to this when I created our banner for this particular thing. And what I did for this one is I used darker color. So let's change it to a darker color. And now I'm going to drop the opacity down. So notice you can get an interesting effect there just by going in and changing the opacity and the mode. So experiment with different blending modes and different opacities, and you can get different results. And some of these can be really fun. All right, so what we want to do now is create some kind of a coloring effect over the top of this. Just like you guys saw when the banner for this. And I'll show you exactly how I did it. I went and I applied a lot that comes with Photoshop. So we went under the adjustment layers. And then let me just go over here. So if you look at the adjustment layers, there's different adjustment layers, and the one we're looking for is color lookup. So if we choose color lookup here, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up our properties here, and these are our color LUTs. So we're going to click here, and we're going to choose a LUT. So there's all kinds of different ones. We could do an edgy amber or full colors. Let's have a look. How does edgy amber look? That looks kind of cool. And that's actually the one that I used. And the other thing that's nice about this too is, of course, we can play around with our blending modes and our opacity. So let's see what it looks like with the different blending modes. I'm just rolling over these blending modes. Now, if you don't have Photoshop CC, you're working on an earlier version of Photoshop, and you want to try this, all you need to do is hit the V key to go into the Move tool. Then hold down the Shift key and tap the plus, and that'll cycle you through all the blending modes, and that way you can preview them. Now, I think I just did a tutorial on blending modes. Yes, I did. Yes, on Tuesday I dropped one, and you guys can watch it after this. It's right there on the YouTube channel, and it's the 5 most useful layer blending modes. Check that out, and I think you'll find that useful. But when it comes down to blending modes, the important thing is not necessarily knowing scientifically what they do. What it is the result. It comes down to something really simple. If it looks good, it is good. All right, let's go through here, and we're just looking at some different ones. So you can see there's a lot of options, and none of these are right and none of these are wrong. They're just different looks, different options. So I feel like this hard light's nice, but it's a little much, so we could pull the opacity down a little bit. And you can see how we can start to create these interesting looks. So this was us before, and then this is us after. So if you just wanted to do the look without the texture, it's there. And with the texture, there it is. All right, so why don't we play around a little bit and try some of these other textures. So let's go back to our patterns again. And this time, I want to bring in this sieve. I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but it's just a very interesting look. So I'm just going to double click on it, and that will actually bring it in. And I spelled it S-I-V, which is terrible. It's S-E-I-V something I don't spell. But here it is, and you can see there's our sieve over the top. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I spelled it kind of like Sith. All right, so here we go. And this is kind of nice. I like this. So let's hide the other layers and just have this on its own. So notice right now it's clipped to them. All I need to do is hit the Alt or the Option key and unclip it, and it's over the top. And let's try some blending modes with this and see how it looks. This is actually really cool. In fact, I'm thinking this would look really cool in video. To use this on a video, maybe here in something like a soft light or an overlay, and animate it a little bit. It almost looks like you're looking through a veil or a piece of cloth or something like that. In fact, yeah, it's kind of like you're shooting through a veil. That's what it kind of looks like a little bit to me. And so, full disclosure here, I had not photographed the sieve before, so this was my first time attempting to see if this would work. Let's hit Control J, and we're going to double it. And one of the things that can also look really interesting is when we take these and we can blend 2 layers together with different blending modes. We can get some really interesting results. And another trick that I like to do sometimes with these textures that's kind of interesting is to take one and invert it. So what I need to do is I need to rasterize that. So I'm going to right click on here and choose rasterize layer. And what that does is it turns it from this texture layer to just a regular layer. So now I can hit Control T, I can free transform, I can hit Control I, like I'm doing, and I can invert it, and I can do different things. So now I've got one over the top of the other one. One's inverted and the other one isn't. Notice how they kind of cancel each other out. But if I move it, now we can create some interesting looking textures between the two layers. Look at that. That's kind of funky. Let me put both of these in a group, and then we can use another blending mode over the entire group. And see what we're doing by doing that. Now we're able to create an entirely new texture out of the same textures. And one of the things you might want to do is put that mask over it. So let's go in here. We're going to create a layer mask just by clicking on the new layer mask icon. And then I'm going to grab my brush. Once again, that black brush, I'm going to bring it down and I'm just going to paint over our model and kind of let her start to show through a little bit. I want some of it down in the bottom of her. So I'm just kind of painting it through there. And her arm looks a little funky, so let's just get it off her arm. And you can see what we're doing there, just applying that. Oh, Dennis Dunbar's in the house. Good to see you, Dennis. Dennis is a good friend of mine from Los Angeles. He's a retoucher. Could you clip a curves adjustment layer to the pattern layer and use that to invert the values? Yes, you could. That's actually a very good point there. You could do the same thing by choosing an adjustment layer, choosing an invert as well. You could just choose an invert adjustment layer and hit the Alt Option key and clip it that way. Or you could do it with the curves, but invert, yeah, good call there. So if you don't want to convert that, if you didn't want to rasterize it, you could keep it as a pattern and just use that invert adjustment layer. Let me show you guys that again because I did it very quickly. So say here's a pattern here and you wanted to invert that pattern. You could go down here under the adjustment layers, choose invert. It's going to invert everything, but I just want to affect just the pattern layer. So if I hold the Alt or the Option key, it's going to create an arrow. And now I've just inverted that mask. So if you look at that texture there, and now you look at it there, it's inverted because I created that invert adjustment layer. So thanks, Dennis, for triggering that idea. All right, so here we go. We can combine some of these. And now if it feels like it's a little too much on some of them, you can take the opacity down. You know, we could take the opacity down here on the color and different things like that too if we wanted. So you can see you've got these options. So we can start to build up these different things with the different textures and stuff like that. So let's see if you guys have got any questions here regarding that. I see Bruce has dropped some questions in here. Let's have a look. How did you get your brush panel to include all that? Okay, so that's a good question there. As far as the brush panel, I've got a lot of different brushes in here. And what you need to do is you need to, if you've just reinstalled, you want to go under your brushes and you want to load in your legacy brushes. So I'm just clicking here. This is my brush settings. And then let me go to my brushes panel. There we go. I want my brushes panel. And if you look under the brushes panel, when you click on this little icon here, this shows all the different brush sets that I have. And one of the ones you'll see here is called Legacy Brushes. If you click on Legacy Brushes, that's going to load up all these legacy brushes or all these other brushes in here. And you can see them there. These are the ones that came with Photoshop before. And this is the same with all your presets. When you go to Photoshop 2020, they added new presets, but they also blew out all the old ones. But they're there. They're just under legacy. Legacy brushes, patterns, textures, shapes, styles, all of them are there. And you just need to go into their panels, hit these little hamburger menus, load in legacy, and they're all going to be there. And now there's other ones. These are some of my brush sets. Some of these I've created. Some of these I've found. Some of these I've bought. And there's just brushes that I've been using throughout the years. And what you want to do with that is you click on here, and then you want to just make sure that you want to export, you choose your brushes, and you're going to, I haven't chosen any, that's why export's grayed out. And you want to export those brushes and save them. And then you can choose here, you can import brushes. Now, you know, you could spend a lot of time just looking around and finding brushes, or you can make your own. And same thing with textures. So the brushes are actually making brushes is not that different than making textures. All you're simply doing here is, let me just show you something quickly, guys. I'm just going to go here to regular. So I'm just resetting this texture here. Of course, I've got the mask. Let me hit the shift space. So what I did is I just shift clicked on there. And if I wanted to turn this into a brush, I just select it. Now remember, this brush is going to be created the size of the document. And our document dimensions are... actually, let me move myself over. Alright, so the document, we can go under here, click this little arrow, and then you're going to see document dimensions. So right now we're 11 inches by that inches. Let's change this to pixels. So you got the rulers, right click, choose pixels. There we go. So we're 3300 pixels by 2200 pixels. So this is going to be a big brush. So if we choose edit, and then we go down to define brush preset, you're going to see it's going to create that brush. So boom, now we have that as a brush. So let me show you. So here we are with our image. I'm going to create a new layer, and there's our brush. So I can choose any color I want now. I know it's a lot of stuff that I'm showing you guys, and I'm going to click here, and boom, I was able to stamp that on as a brush. Now, don't forget our replay is going to be live, so after this finishes, YouTube uploads that replay. It takes somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes after, so if you're not following along with everything, all of that's going to be there in the replay. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions here. Okay, so we've answered that one, we've answered the brush, we've clipped the adjustment. That's funny. I would choose Jimmy Page there, Dennis. We're talking about Led Zeppelin and Photoshop. Yeah, I would definitely choose Jimmy Page. Alright, so what do we got here? What if the pattern is smaller than the photo itself so you can see the lines of that pattern meeting? This happens to me a lot. Well, you just need to make the pattern a little bit bigger. So that's answering Polka Dot Studio. So let's go here. Let's show a pattern. Let me hide all of what I've done here. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go under the patterns panel. So if the panel, so if it's not big enough, like maybe this microfiber cloth isn't, that looks like it is, but all you need to do is just double click on it, and I kind of showed this a little bit earlier, so yours might be small like that. Just go in here and change the scale to 120 or whatever you need to do to make it bigger, and that's all you need to do. So just scale it up. Now just remember, of course, you can scale it up so much without it losing quality. At some point it's going to start to deteriorate. But when you're using it as a texture and overlay or something like that, a lot of the time, you know, people are not going to notice at all. You can actually get away with quite a lot there. So you can save the third texture as a new texture. Sure you could. Absolutely. Yes, you could. So you can, you know, create all these textures together. Let me try something really weird just to show you, can we mix these textures? So we're doing something like this, and all I would do is I would just, you'd have to merge them first, Control E to merge them, and then you just go into your texture panel, under your patterns panel, and then just hit plus, and now you've got a new texture of all that weird stuff there. So yeah, you can do that. So you can build textures out of textures, and also you can do some interesting things working with different filters with them as well. So let me just have a quick look here. Does the image that you make a brush from have to be monochromatic, or can you use a color image? You can use a color image, but the brush is always going to be monochromatic. There's no support for multicolored brushes in Photoshop. So when you create that brush, it's just going to be monotone, and of course you can assign a color when you do that. Alright, so why don't we do this right now? I'm going to open one of these on its own. So I'm just going to choose File, New. And let's just create a new document. And then we're going to go to our patterns here. And why don't we open up something like our cloth here. Let's do our microfiber cloth. So I'm just going to double click on here. Actually, I'm not going to double click. I am going to drag it into the document. Okay, so some of the things you can do in here, let me double click here and make sure it's 100%. Great. So you could change the color of it. So if we go under here and we choose a hue saturation, so we're going down there, we're choosing hue saturation, and now we're just going to change the hue. We can choose a different color. And then we could do something like run a filter in here. I'm going to rasterize this first though, I'm just going to just right click and rasterize the layer. I could convert it to smart object. Let me convert it to a smart object. And then choose filter, because all these filters now that are supported in a smart object, we can apply to it, and that's going to enable us to transform it and still keep it where we can do different things to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under distort, and why don't we do something like a, I don't know, a twirl, just for fun. So let's twirl this, creating this weird vortex, click OK, and maybe that's a little much. Let's do a little less. Let's choose the distort here, once again. And I'm going to choose the twirl, and I'm not going to get as crazy as I did. Maybe about there. Click OK. And now if we zoom into this, you know, we've created some interesting, you know, just interesting textures that you could use for different things, vortexes or whatnot. So I just want to encourage you guys just to experiment, and that really was a lot of what this was about, was just learning to experiment. So right now we're going to take some questions to do with these, just for a couple of minutes. We're going to do some questions that you guys might have on these patterns and textures, and then we're going to move to the next segment. So let's just do this really quickly. Tracy says she forgets to rasterize. Yeah, you can rasterize or convert that to that smart object. Something looks like lightning. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you can get some just really, really interesting effects. And if you be creative, it's amazing what you can come up with. What if the pattern is smaller? Okay, we did that one. So can you save the third texture? Yep, we did that. Actually, let me look on Bruce's questions. Okay, so the parenting network is asking, I always get confused about rasterizing. Can you define what it does? Yes. So there's different types of layers inside of Photoshop. So, you know, it could be a type layer. Let me do something there. I have no idea what that is, but I'm just typing randomly. So you can see there's different types of layers in Photoshop. And when we get something like a layer like this, which is a just a rasterized layer is pixels. And with this, we can run every filter. You can change the pixels. You can paint on it. Let me go to a regular brush. You know, you can make that smaller. Yeah, you can paint on it. You can do all kinds of things. Let's make sure it's not showing because I've got other things over the top. There we go. So this is just a regular pixel layer. And it supports every transformation, supports everything. Now you get into something like this when we go into a texture layer. And I hit Control T to free transform, it won't let me. But a regular layer, I can Control T, hit free transform. I can warp. I can do all these kinds of things because it's a regular pixels. I'm just pushing the pixels around. But this is not pixels. Same with the type. I can go here and I can change the size of the type here. I can right click, but I can even warp it a little bit. But it's not going to let me do a lot. You're gonna be kind of limited what you can do here. Let me try that warp. No, it's not even warping. So you can't do a lot to a text layer. But if you want to apply these transformations, rasterizing it is right click and then you choose rasterize type. It turns it into pixels where now I can go in here, I can warp, I can do whatever I want because now it's pixels. So that can apply to any layer. It could be a type layer, texture layer, just any layer that you put in Photoshop. You can right click there and you can rasterize it. Converts it to pixels and enables you to run filters, enables you to paint on it, enables you to do all that. All right, so let's see what we've got here before we move on. So that answered the question there, Eileen. Why do you rasterize? All right, great. Okay, so I think, guys, it's time for us to move into another section here. So why don't we do that? All right, now it's time for our favorite segment, Fix My Photo. And what we're going to be doing in here is where I am working on your photos. So we're going to take some photographs that you have submitted, and I'm going to do some different things. I'm going to fix them, I'm going to apply different effects, and we're going to just process them and also do a little bit of a critique. So if you guys want to submit your photos and you want your photos included, Bruce will drop the link too. But there we go. It is right there, fearlesscafe.com. I'm actually going to be doing fixmyphoto.net, but I'm waiting for that domain name to resolve, so we were kind of working on that. But maybe if you guys like Fearless Cafe, do you like that better? Let me know. And if you submit your photo in there, you can see the instructions. Upload a RAW or JPEG at least 2,000 pixels. I prefer it unedited. Don't forget to put your name in the file name and a maximum of 3 submissions. And then we're just going to go through here and we're just going to randomly just pick, well, randomly, I'm going to choose pictures that I feel like, you know, are good ones to work on at the time, you know, some things I want to show you guys. So let's go directly to the desktop right now and have a look. And these are the photos that you guys have submitted that I haven't used yet. And you can see we've got some nice ones here. And there's some lovely ones here. I'm just going to do a quick roll call of a couple of people because I want to be using these photos this week. Tom Strazula. Tom Strazula, are you in the house? Let me know. Because this is a lovely photograph. Look at this, guys. Beautiful. He's obviously a birder and does a good job of it. So some people like that name. Fearless is great. People like Fearless. All right, because you got to be fearless to upload your photos, although you don't, because I'm not Simon Cowell. I'm actually very nice. I'm not going to be cruel or say anything bad about photos. I don't believe in that kind of critique. I believe in always encouraging people, and because we're all at different levels. Some of us are much more experienced than others, and you shouldn't put down people because they have less experience than you. That's just a horribly arrogant attitude. All right, so here's another one that Charles Porter. Are you here, Charles? Let me know if you're here. I'm just looking there quickly because there's a little bit of a delay. This is why I wait a little second to see if the people are here. Sorry, Eileen, you have to leave. It was good having you. All right, guys, so it looks like Charles here shot a bracketed photo here on a Nikon camera. I can tell because it's an NEF, and he was in Las Vegas. In fact, I know where he was. He was in Mandalay Bay, and I know because I've been in Mandalay Bay, and this is the view you get from Mandalay Bay. So this is a great shot here of the strip inside of Las Vegas. So I see that this goes from a very bright photo to a very dark photo, which tells me that he has shot 1, 2, 7, I was counting there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 photos that he shot bracketed for HDR. All right, so we are going to do these. We're going to merge them together, and we're going to make them look nice and see how we can keep them as natural as possible. Now, one of the things I would suggest here, Charles, I don't think you needed to shoot so many shots because it looks like you're using a pretty small bracket. In fact, we'll open these right now. I'll double-click, and we'll go to Camera Raw, and let's see. So as we double-click, Camera Raw will go in here, and it will open all of the photos here in the film strip. And so we can see what we've got here is we've got a little bit of, I guess this is on the window, because sometimes the windows can get a little dirty there. And one of the things I would recommend, and it looks like you were doing it, is if you're shooting through a window, what you want to do is take something like a towel, get your camera so your lens is actually touching the glass on the window, and then take a towel or a blanket or something over you so you can just kind of cover that area, and then you're not going to get reflections. And it looks like you got very faint reflections, but you're not really suffering from reflections too much here, which is good. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to merge these together. So I'm looking at this first shot, though, and I can see he's at ISO 1000, 2470 shooting at 44 millimeters, and f10, and 1/250th of a second. Let's go down. Okay, so look, 1/250, 160, 100, 60, 40. Okay, so you're definitely bracketing these shots and doing it correctly because you're using the shutter speed, which is what you want to do. You never want to bracket the aperture because then that would create blurring and issues. Now, you didn't really need to shoot this many shots to capture the entire dynamic range of the scene. You could have probably bracketed a little bit bigger, like 2 stops at a time, and you could have captured this in 3 shots. But that's okay. So what we're going to do is we have now selected these. I'm going to right click, and then what we're going to do is we're going to choose Merge to HDR. So we can do this here inside of Camera Raw. Now I just want to let you guys know I am working in Camera Raw, so I'm getting better in the new Camera Raw now. And I'm actually creating a full course, so I don't know if that excites you or not, but that should be ready in the next week or two. I have been working very, very hard on that, trying to get a course together for the new Camera Raw because of the interface changes and different things like that. Alright, so what we've done here now is this is all of them put together. Now you have an option to DeGhost, and deghosting will help eliminate, where there's things like moving cars and you see half a car there. And I'm looking in here, I'm not really seeing any issues with any ghosting. It's actually looking pretty good. So you'll see them, when you see like something that's like semi-transparent because it's moving in the scene. And you can do that, but I gotta be honest, I don't think the deghosting works very well inside of Camera Raw. And by the way, if you guys are using Lightroom, these are exactly the same settings inside of Lightroom as you'll get in Camera Raw. They both work the same. They're the same processing engine. So if I've got serious deghosting, I would do it into Merge to HDR Pro inside of Photoshop. Alright, so here, this is looking pretty good. So we're going to merge it, and it's going to ask me to create a new DNG file. And I'm going to click Save. And so what it's doing right now is it's saved out that DNG, and here it is. Now the reason it does to a DNG is so it can maintain all the image data from all of those photos and all the dynamic range. So let me just go here. Here's the lightest photo. And let me just show you what's happening. If I take my exposure all the way down, you can see we can recover a lot of that detail. Good dynamic range on this camera, by the way. And you can see that's how bright or how dark it can go. Or if we were to go to the darkest image, and I'm just explaining why we're putting these together. So you're exposing here, and this is giving you details in the highlight areas. And the shadows get a little plugged up. But let's have a look and see how much we've got there. So you've got a lot. You could open this up, but notice how it gets really, really noisy. You get a lot of noise there. So one of the things that merging HDR can also do is reduce the noise. So let's go down to the one that we've just merged, and here it is. And let's have a look at the exposure. So now if we take it, look at this, see how it's not falling apart? Well, till we get really bright. But see how there's not that really bad noise there in the shadows anymore? So I'm just going to double click. So we've got all the dynamic range in here. The first thing that we need to fix is the white balance. We've got this real green kind of white balance. And what we're going to do is we could go in here, we could use these adjustments, but I'm just going to grab the Eyedropper Tool. And with the Eyedropper Tool, all we need to do is find an area that would be white or gray and just click. Let's click here on, this is Excalibur. We'll click there. Yeah, I've been to Vegas too many times. Let's click on the, it's not looking too good. It's still a little funny. So let's click on the Sphinx here, which should be gray, and that's looking a lot better. So you're looking for that area of gray. When all else fails, sometimes roads work very well too. Let me click on that road. Yeah, that works quite well. But I kind of like this Sphinx a little bit better. And notice that we are able to get rid of the color cast in there. That's nice. And because we've got the HDR, we've got a lot of dynamic range, that means that we can recover a lot of highlight detail. See how this is blowing out? When we're working in HDR, we shouldn't have areas that are blowing out. So let's take our contrast down, and let's pull our exposure down a little bit. There we go, boom. See, now we're getting that detail there. And we could open up our shadows a little bit if we wanted. And let me just play around. I'm going to reduce the blacks. Let's push those whites. And we can see that's looking pretty decent. So let's have a look at this before and after. So we can see now we've got the detail there, and that one there, don't tell me that's Tropicana. Yeah, you can tell I spent a lot of time in Vegas. A lot of trade shows. How many of you guys have seen me at trade shows in Vegas? A lot of them. So that's why I know all of these. There's New York, there's Paris, there's MGM Grand, Vidara. Actually, Vidara's on this side. Yeah, so I mean, I could go down these and probably name all of them. Too much time in Vegas. All right, so what we want to do is let's get rid of these little areas up here. So we're going to go down to our spot removal tool here. And what we want to do is make sure it's on heat. Heat, heal. And then all we simply do is just need to click here, and we can just go in and we can, I think that was an airplane up there. We can go in and just get rid of this. I'm going to just say it's muck on the windows. And if you're not sure and you can't see it all, what you want to do is turn on this visualize spots option. And then what this will do is this will show you where the issues are. See these little hickeys up here? Just go in there and click on those. Or you could call them doohickeys if you wanted. And we're just going to click on those, and we are just getting rid of them. And then we turn off visualize spots, and let me turn off the overlay, and there we go. We're able to create this nice photo here from the different shots. So that's what I would do with this one. Thank you for submitting that, Charles Porter. Never too many times in Vegas, says P. Steelman. Well, yeah, until you're there for more than 3 days at a time. I spent a week there, actually 2 weeks there with David Lee Roth for his Las Vegas residency early this year. And trust me, that was enough Vegas. The trick, though, is to make sure you have a humidifier. So, you know, whenever I go to Vegas, I buy a humidifier, put it in my room, because it just gets so dry there because of the desert heat and everything. All right, let's go down here. I want to look at some of these amazing bird photos from Tom. Tom's got just, man, I love your work. This is just beautiful. So I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to double click and go in here. Now, don't forget, guys, if you want to be and submit your photo, just submit your photo, upload it, fearlesscafe.com, and we can be working on your photos as well. And just a limit of 3 photos each, please. Once I use your photo, feel free to upload more, so it's not like you can only submit 3 forever. They're just 3 at a time. And that would be good. And by the way, guys, if you're liking this, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. And the reason I ask you to do that is because it helps the algorithm when we're live. That little notification will come up, and more people will know that we're live streaming if more of you guys hit that like button. That's why I ask you to do that. So it has a reason. And also, if you guys are not subscribed yet, you'll see a little subscribe button there. By the way, that like button is a thumbs up. And you see that subscribe button there on the screen. Just click on that subscribe, and what that does is it doesn't start spamming you or anything, but what it'll do is turn on those notifications, so when I go live, it'll send you a notification and let you know, hey, Photoshop Cafe is live streaming right now. And it will also let you know when we upload new tutorials, which is 3 times a week. So thanks, guys. Appreciate that. All right, so let's continue here. I almost don't want to do anything to this photo because I just love the way this photograph looks. Of course we are, but just this low-key, low contrast, it's almost like log kind of, I love this look and this feel. So, you know, what we're going to do is we're just going to give it a little bit of punch, we're going to give it a little bit of contrast, but we're not going to overdo it. It's just such a beautiful photograph. What camera is he working here? Canon 7D Mark II. And just look at the exposure. Everything is just set right. The composition. I love this light behind it. What a tremendous photograph. If you haven't submitted this in contests, I would definitely recommend that you do. It's beautiful. All right, so what we're going to do here is let's make some little adjustments here. So what we're going to do is let's just bring down our exposure just a little bit. And I'm going to take the highlights and I'm going to bring those down a little bit. And I just want to see what's behind it. Is there any color? Yeah, there's a little bit of color. Okay, so maybe we can let some of that through. So just be careful of that. Don't go too far, because I do like the contrast, but maybe not so much. Take it to here. And I don't really believe we need to open up our shadows because we've got plenty of exposure. The detail's just nice here. So what we're going to do, though, look at the histogram. Notice there's a big gap here on the left and a big gap on the right. That means that this is a low contrast image, meaning there's not a lot of detail right now in the shadows. There's no hard shadows or highlights. Now, as I said before, I love this low contrast look, but let's also do an alternative. We're just going to push this over a little bit and bring in some of the shadows. I'm not going to push the histogram all the way to the end, but I do want to just bring in just a little bit of this just to solidify it a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And let's do the same thing with the whites. Let's push up the whites to just bring out those brighter areas. I don't want to go too far, once again. Maybe take it to about here. So what we're doing is we're just bringing out the detail that's already here in the photo. So if we look at this, what we've done so far is before and after. Now, one of the things I might do too is just give the color temperature just a slight push into the warms. Let's see how that looks. There we go. Not much, but just a little bit, and it's just kind of just adding a little bit of warmth to this overall feel of this photograph. And the other thing too is I'm going to take the vibrance and I'm going to push the vibrance up a little bit. Not all the way like that, but just a little bit, just to kind of bring out some of these colors a little more. And I feel like theirs looking good. I'm looking at the feet, I'm looking at the plant, I'm looking at the beak, and I feel like that's still quite natural. So if we look at this before and after, you know, we're still preserving that nice beauty of that low contrast photograph, but what we're doing here is we are just boosting it, because to me, like I said, it looked a little bit like a log shot. And a log shot in video is usually you want to give it a little more contrast and a little bit of color. And the reason that it has low contrast and color is to capture more dynamic range and more detail, which is what we've got here. So somebody's asking about the image to appear above the image. Are you talking about the thumbnail here? You can just click here and that will open or close the thumbnails there. So I think that's what somebody was asking there. Susan likes the difference. Well, that's good. I'm glad you like that. All right, so the other things we could do here too is we could punch this a little bit. Now, we've got 3 options here. I don't feel like I want to use dehaze as someone's suggesting, because I'll show you what happens. It can give you a nice look, but see how it darkens it? You know, you could, but you would want to kind of compensate it for exposure. You could also use clarity, but you know, a little clarity is actually not hurting that either. And that's punching the mid-tone contrast, but I want to give it a little touch of texture to see what that does. See what we're doing? We're just bringing out the texture here in the feathers and in these feathers up here. I almost called it fur, but they're feathers. Birds don't have fur. So we're just going to increase it a little bit, and it looks cool. This is amazing. It almost looks like a dinosaur or something. That's the way that head is. So we're just giving it a little bit of texture, and let's have a look at this before and after. You can see without making big moves, we can make a big difference to the image while still keeping it natural. So one other thing I might do on here, just because even though we've kind of already got a natural vignette going on by shooting this in the middle and having these rushes kind of filling around it, let's give it just a little touch of a vignette as well to just go with that effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under Effects. And by the way, if you're missing tools here inside of Camera Raw, these little disclosure triangles, if you click on these little disclosure triangles, these will give you the different settings. So if you're missing them, this is where they are. And I'm going to take this vignette and I'm just going to move it just slightly to the left. There we go. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then what's doing is just really letting this bird be center stage, because this is what the photograph is of. And if we look at this before and we look at this one afterward, you know, we are good. And thank you very much, Tom, for submitting this photograph. I've said it 50,000 times. It's beautiful. I love this photo. All right, so here's another one. And this photo here is kind of interesting. So this one is, obviously, it's a very, very high contrast situation. And this is where we are. Oh, someone was asking about the before and the after. Okay, let me answer that question quickly and I'll come back. So before and after, I'm just hitting the backslash key. Backslash will give you before and after, or you can go down here and just click this little before or after icon there. So just let you guys know that. All right, so this is where multiple exposures could really come in handy, because you can see that the background is too bright to register and the foreground is too dark to register. So we're not bringing out a lot of detail, but this is properly exposed. Obviously, Tom is very experienced and knows what he's doing. And he set the exposure here for the bird in the foreground. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring out the details. So I'm just going to show you how much detail you can get out of a raw file, and it's really quite astounding. So let's go under the basics, and if we take the exposure all the way down, you can see, okay, you can see there's a little bit of water there. We're not really going to be able to save that water. I mean, we could, but it would be very, very difficult. And if we go all the way up, notice we've got the colors here in the bird. That's what we're really interested in. All right, so why don't we try this? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our highlights, we're going to push it all the way to the left, and see we're recovering quite a bit of that information there in the background. In fact, if we go back here, we can bring out the silhouette of that, and we might do that. All right, so let's go here, and we're going to open up the shadows a little bit on the bird. And we could, push it all the way there. That's how much just shadow and highlight does. And one of the things I've always been saying to you guys is the shadows and highlights are recovery sliders. And if you look at that, look at this, just from shadows and highlights. That's how much highlight detail we can recover. That's how much shadow detail we can recover. It's quite amazing. But let's bring that back a little bit because I feel like it's just a little too much. And I'm going to bring exposure down. There we go. So we get just a little bit going in the background here. Now, there's two different ways of approaching this. One would be to just say, forget about the background. In fact, let me do that first. And by the way, to reset everything, all you need to do is just click on here and just reset to open. So if I was going to say, you know what, forget about the background, I would open up the exposure a little bit. I would open up the shadows a little bit, maybe too much. Let's bring that back. Let's hit those whites. Play around with these blacks. I'm actually going to reduce the amount of blacks, give it a little touch of there, and then vibrance. Watch this. We could push that up a little bit. And see what we're doing here is now we're bringing in the detail from the bird. So we could do that, give it a little contrast. And so if we look at this before and after, we're bringing back the bird, and you could composite against a different background or leave it against white. But let's do something where we can do all of it. So we're going to reset to open again, and I'm going to recover all our highlights, and recover some of the shadows. I'm going to take this exposure back just a little bit so we can start to see some of these ripples behind there. And this is annoying me. Let me just quickly fix that. I'm just going to hit the right bracket key and we'll just get that out of the way. There we go. There was a little bit of dust there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab our brush. Let's grab our adjustment brush. And we're going to go in here. And this is going to be a little bit similar to what we did last week with Rod Shelley's picture that he had of the eagle. And we're going to turn the mask options so we can see the mask. And that's going to be yellow. Auto mask is on. And then we're just painting around here and we're just selecting the bird. I'm not going to do the beak because the beak is fine. I just want to get the feathers around here. So essentially we're just going around it and we're just selecting that bird. Great. And I could make this perfect, but I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. So we're going to take the mask options, and now we can go in here, and now we're just working on the bird. See, just that selection area. So now we could open this up a little bit, give it that little punch of contrast. The only thing, let's go down here, that's kind of annoying is in the local adjustment brushes, we only have saturation. I don't know why they haven't put vibrance in here. And the difference between vibrance and saturation is saturation just moves everything, whereas vibrance takes the areas that are less saturated and boosts those. So it enables you to boost the colors without it looking overdone. Okay, let's have a look here. And so that's looking kind of interesting. I'm going to take the exposure just a little bit too bright. Just a little. And the reason for that is because I'm working on this local adjustment. I'm going to warm it up a little bit too. And I have a reason for this. So I'm going to go just a little bit too warm and a little bit too bright. And the reason for that is now when I go back to my main adjustments, when you adjust this, everything adjusts together. So that means I can take this down a little bit darker. And it's letting a little bit more of that show through. And I wanted to put a little blue into the color. So if I cool it down, we go to, now the bird is the proper color. And notice now we've got this blue in the background. So if we were looked at this before and after, that's one possible way that I might go ahead and process that image. All right, Mary Jensen, would you process the image in ACR differently if you were going to print it as opposed to just enjoyed it on the screen? The answer to that is not a lot, no. If I'm just looking at it on screen, well, as far as the major movements that I'm making, no. I would still do the same thing with color. I would still do the same thing with the tone. But what I would do if I was going to be doing printing rather than just showing it on the screen, I would zoom in quite close and make sure that my edges are clean. And I would spend a little bit more time with that selection brush, that masking brush, and make sure that I mask that very, very carefully. The other thing I would look at is I would zoom into 100%. Let's have a look at this at 100%. Because on screen it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm looking at here at 100, and I'm looking at these edges. They're not bad, but I might want to do a little work on those edges, get them a little bit better. And you can just do that with the brush, of course. And then another thing I might do is check the chromatic aberration. So let's go under here, and we're going to Look at that. That's going to be under the, I believe, the optics panel. Okay, so we've got the profiles on already, and the chromatic aberration. Okay, that's on. So if you look at these edges, see how you get a little green around there? Sometimes you get greens, you get purples in there. And you turn on this, the defringing, that'll clean it up. So one of the things I might do here, though, is under the detail slider, I might give it a little bit of sharpening if I'm going to print. Sharpen it just a little bit. And also there's a little bit of noise in there, so I might go and just give it a little touch of noise reduction. In fact, let's have a look at this. There's a noise reduction up there. And give it a little bit. I wouldn't go much. Okay. So maybe I might do that. So if I'm going to go and print, I'd give it a little noise reduction, a little sharpening, and that's going to just kind of help you on the print. So you do want to care about those details when you're doing the print. So anyway, guys, once again, I'm just going to ask you, if you liking this, hit that thumbs up right now. That's the like button. It's going to kind of help us with the algorithm. If you're new here or you haven't been on our YouTube channel before, consider hitting that subscribe button right now and also turn on those notifications, and then you're going to know when we upload new videos. So what I'm going to do right now is open it up to questions and answers. So you guys go ahead, drop all your questions into the chat pod. As far as the formal part of the education, it's over. We've gone for 1 hour. So thanks, guys, for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I'm just going to hang out for a little bit here, and I'm going to do some questions and answers. All right, so here's our chats right there, and here we are. You can see me on here. Let's do it. So any questions and answers, guys? We're going to do that. So for the replay, all that'll be there, and now it's just kind of like our time here. Let's have a look here. Questions there? Yes, sorry, it was a wild guess, but explain. Okay, let's have a look. Joseph said, great shot. Susan liked the shot. Beautiful job. Thank you. Texture button is amazing. I love